Alright, hi, electric division, electric diesel, electric motor division. This is different from general electric locomotives because EMD is different from GE, okay? Alright, so EDM, EMD, electric motor division, SD45, locomotive service manual. Alright, section 1, number 1, fuel system, 2, lubrication oil system, 3, cooling system, 4, central air system, 5, compressed air system, 6. Guide to excitation control and electrical transmission system. 6A. Basic reactor theory. 6B. Electrical transmission. 6C. Excitation system. Turbocharged locomotives. 6D. Transition control system. 6E. Special device and services. Special device and circuits. And 7. Inspection replacement of contact tips for power reverser shunting switch gear. 8. Electrical equipment. 9. Power control system testing and setting. 10. Wheel slip control testing and setting. Transistor control testing and setting. The star means serve the data pages at the end of the section that may carry the difference from the data of the sections themselves. 2 stars means the sections are not available at the time of the distribution of the locomotive service manual. They will be forwarded when available. Alright, forward. This method covers the mechanical electrical maintenance with the purpose to provide instruction for that what may be called the on-locomotive the maintenance along with the instruction testing and adjustments over the system. It will also serve to leave the locomotive operating manual for the details provided under the separate cover of the material for the general familiarization of the locomotive with the components and system. The instruction maintenance required to do deep involvement of the component repair instruction for the rework that involves bench apparatus consumed with the presented with the standard EMD electric motor division maintenance instruction for the inform. The instruction covering the diesel engine appear in the electric motor division engine maintenance manual. Certain engine mounted equipment may receive the brief mention of the locomotive service manual, but information of the engine maintenance manual covering such equipment takes precedence. Service data packages is included at the back of each section of the locomotive service manual. This page is provided with the following: 1. The reference to applicable maintenance instruction, reference to applicable replacement parts. Number 2, 3. Reference component of the manufacturer technical literature. 4. Reference to applicable tool and apparatus numbers. 5. The reference to instruction file number of the control customer manufacturer tab. This again apparatus in section part following. 6. For specific system value for the operating and testing. Alright, locomotive service manual, section 1, electric motive diesel separate service manual, the SD45 locomotive service manual fuel system. Our pictorial diagram of the fuel system is shown with the figure 1-1 with the fuel drawn with the sword tank through the suction fuel train by the motor driven the gear of the type of the fuel pump. From the pump the torque through a large vertical filter fuel filter with the engine mounted filter. After passing through the double element, the engine mounted filter with the fuel flows through the manifold that extend with both lengths for the engine. The manifold supply with the fuel to the injectors. The excess fuel is not used with the injector returned to the fuel tank through the return of the fuel side glass mount and the filter housing. Restriction inside of the return glass causes back pressure, thus maintaining positive supply of the fuel injector. The pump delivers the more fuel for the engine burning the cylinder excess for the fuel circulated with the cooling and lubricating with the fine working parts of the injector. Also, the figure 1-1 shows the fuel oil system pictorial diagram starting from the fuel water drain tank to the fuel tank, the end view fuel level fuel filler with the fuel suction line, fuel return line, fuel supply line, fuel suction line going to the fuel suction strand, fuel oil pump, and the fuel supply line going up to the rack mounted oil filter, engine mounted fuel filter, bypass side glass, return fuel side glass, fuel supply line, fuel return line, and injectors. Fuel side glass with the 2 side glass with the figure 1-2 with the located with the engine mount with the filter. However, to give the visual indication for the fuel system in the condition for the proper engine for the operation for the return of the fuel side glass with the glass near the engine should be fuel of clear of the free of the bubble. The fuel flowing through the glass for the excess not required of the engine. Upon leaving the glass required of the fuel tank, the recirculation at the time the engine starts with the side glass must be empty. When the fuel system is proper and turbulent flow will occur, then the fuel in the glass will flow clear with the free of the bubbles at such time the engine will be cranked. Figure 1-2 shows the fuel oil side glass with the filter element housing, by side glass normally empty, and the return fuel side glass normally full. The engine-mounted filter is also equipped with the bypass relay valve side glass farther from the engine is normally empty with the motor. The trickle of the fuel is seen with the bypass side glass to indicate that the relief of the valve is open. The fuel will pass through the bypass side glass with the revalve of the bypass for the engine. Return to the fuel tank in the case that the filter elements become clogged. The condition may become serious and cause the engine shut down with the lack of fuel. The emergency fuel cutoff switch in the event of the emergency with the fuel supply with the engine stopped by the pressing of any of the 3 emergency fuel cutoff switches. 2 switches are located on one on either side of the locomotive. The fuel tank of the third switch are located in the upper half of the left-hand side of the electrical cabinet. In the cab of the switch is connected with the series in which the fuel pump contacts the the FPC fuel pump contactor. Pressing any of the switch button for the momentarily will de-energize the fuel pump contactor, stop the fuel pump, shut down the engine button. Then buttons are spring loaded and do not need to be reset into the fuel pump circuit, drawing to the end of the section. Maintenance. Fuel storage facility. The presence of the slime of the fuel filters indicate that the bacteria or the fungi are present with the tolerable shown quantity of water in the fuel storage tank should be kept at the minimum possible level to contact electric motor division with the, or General Motors Corporation or the fuel supplier with the recommendations regarding the antiseptic treatment of the fuel storage facilities. Drain condensation with the fuel tank. Condensation should be drained for the locomotive fuel tank for the interval stipulated with the scheduled maintenance program more frequently in the condition warm during the draining of the locomotive should be placed on the incline with the dry end of the drain end of the tank facing downhill. This will ensure the condensate accumulate with the drain plug. Figure 1 will allow the adequate draining without loss of fuel with the drain plug secured with the drain block with the retaining screw. The plug should be loosened until the drain slide with the plug is exposed. Inspect the drain plug with the gasket whenever the condensate is being drained from the fuel tank. Filling the fuel tank. The fuel tank can be filled with either side of the locomotive with a short life level of glass located next to each of the fuel filters. The fuel gauge will indicate the fuel level at the top of the tank is about 4.5 inches below the top, and it should be observed while filling the tank to prevent overfilling. Do not handle the fuel with near open flame. A basic filler cap assembly. Figure 1-3 is equipped with the strainer and pressure relief of the cap. To periodically inspect the fuel strainer with the test for the relief cap for the operation against the spring. Also check the condition with the filler cap gasket. Figure 1-3 shows the fuel filler assembly. Figure 1 primary fuel suction strainer. Figure 1-4 fuel suction strainer should be cleaned with the inspected with the intervals stay with the scheduled maintenance program or shorter intervals operating with conditions warrant. Figure 1-4 shows the fuel suction strainer exploded view. Okay, so for the bolts, the cap, the filter, and the canister. Cleaning procedure. For the stop of the diesel engine, place the fuel in the pump circuit, fuel pump circuit breaker in the opposition. Remove the bolt handle with the filter shelf of the filter. The cover. Remove the shelf filter of the filter from the cover to prevent loss of the thread bolts with the washer. Through the strainer shell thread the openings. Withdraw the wire mesh with the filter element. Discard the oil sediment with the help in the strainer. Clean the wire mesh element with the container of the clean fuel oil. The brush may be used with the round wooden dowel employed with the spread of the pleats and determine the degree of the cleanliness, but not no special tools are necessary. Caution: chlorinated hydrocarbon solvent at a temperature above 180 degrees Fahrenheit will damage the epoxy material filter element assembly. Clean the shell with the fuel oil. Wipe it clean with a note that the spring at the bottom of the shell is spotted with a welded to the shell. Inspect the housing with the cover of the O-ring with replace with the new ring if necessary. Place the clean strainer and ultimate in the shell with reapply with the shell with the strainer with the cover the timely firm and then place after making the strainer of the O-ring is properly seated. Primary fuel filter. Figure 1-5. The primary fuel filter element should be trained with the intervals for the scheduled maintenance program and short intervals operating with the conditions warrant. Cleaning procedure. Stop the diesel engine. Place the isolation switch in the isolation position. Please place the container at about 5-gallon size to the catch fuel drain opening of the 1/2 of the pipe plug with the drain located at the bottom of the plate of the filter housing. Note if the pipe plug with the filter cover the open shortly after the engine shutdown pressure is retained, but the system will cover the fuel to spurt out of the open and loosen the filter cover the plate. Return the retaining nuts to the twist to cover the remove the withdrawal of the discard of the cageless waste type of the filter element. Place the fuel prime with the switch in the fuel prime position. Introduce the fuel flow with the wash out any sediment that may be held at the base of the filter housing. 5. Insert the new filter element in the housing, being careful not to damage the lower seal of the filter element. 6. Inspect the filter housing cover gasket to replace the new gasket if necessary. Replace the housing cover firmly tighten the retaining bolts. Figure 1-5 shows the primary fuel filter and housing. 7. Retighten 1/2 inch pipe plug with the base of the filter housing. 8. Open the fuel prime switch. Open the fuel for the return for the clear of the bubbles. Return the fuel cycle last check for the leakage of the drain plug in the housing cover. The engine mounted fuel filters. The engine mounted fuel filters should be chained with the interval stipulated by the scheduled maintenance program, and filter assembly should be cleaned within accordance with the instruction of the engine maintenance manual. Check the engine of the filter elements indication of the rust of the presence of a combination of water and dirt causing the premature clogging of the filter elements, damage to the engine fuel injector, fuel pump, in motor. The motor of the driven, the fuel pump figure 1/6 the amount of the equipment rack is integral gear pump with the driven by the battery power during the system priming with the power of the auxiliary generator during the operation. Fuel is drawn by the inlet portion of the fill of the space with the gear of the teeth coming out of the mesh, then the fuel is trapped within the space between the gear of the teeth and carried out on the outside of the pump. The gear is meshed within the force of fuel between the gear teeth and through the outlet. The fuel pump and the motor need no routine maintenance if the operation is satisfactory for the motor and the pump should be reconditioned in accordance with the electric motor division's maintenance instruction listed in the start of the data page. Maintenance should be performed at intervals stipulated with the scheduled maintenance program. Caution you for the care during washing of the engine room to protect the fuel pump of the motor from water. Water applied to the motor can cover the electrical grounding. Fuel pump circuit figure 1 side of both the main battery switch from the fuel pump circuit are closed. The circuit is the number 1 contact fuel pump engine starting switch for the energize of the power supplied to the fuel pump motor and through the number 1 and number 2 contact switches that help with the fuel pump of the engine starting position. At such time, the number 5 and number 6 contacts are open to prevent motoring with the auxiliary generated by the storage battery. Note that the number 1 and number 2 terminals remain closed during the engine cranking to this. Figure 1/6 is the fuel pump cross section, discharge and suction, and let's see. Note that number 1 and 2 terminals remain closed during the engine cranking. This is to ensure adequate supply with the fuel engine during the cranking. Whenever the engine has been started with the fuel for the prime of the engine, start with the switch, release for the power from the auxiliary generator, drive the fuel pump to provide the fuel pump for the full power fuel pump contactor for the fuel pump with the fuel pump relay. Remain with the picked up with the purpose of the fuel pump relay is to provide control for the fuel with the supply with the switch engine control stand. For the purpose of the fuel pump control contactor is provided with the means for the normal engine emergency name engine shutdown. Fuel pump relay can interlock if they do not appear with the figure 1 type of preventing the engine from being cranked. Fuel pump relay has not been picked up. The fuel pump contact. The fuel pump contactor has been picked up during the engine cranking. The interlocks do not appear with the figure 1/6 will cause the engine shut down as soon as the manual control lever shaft is required. Alright, the top shows the fuel permanent engine started with the X's and 1 and 2 contacts as prime and start, 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 release, 7 and 8 start, and 9 start. Show the main battery switch going to an ammeter on the left side of the battery switching resistor, and then also on the outside of the limb you got the battery switch, the AM, the control CB, the control fuel pump relay, fuel pump control going to the closed during the start, auxiliary generator, fuel pump motor, open prime resistor, closed prime starter, fuel pump relay, push button, fuel pump control relay, fuel pump control, CB, local control cabinet, engine stop, engine emergency shut-off fuel. Alright, serve the data for the fuel system. Reference fuel oil specifications MI 1715, fuel pump maintenance MI 4110, fuel pump motor maintenance 4101, routine maintenance parts equipment, primary fuel filter, cageless wastewater type elements, cover, gasket, engine mounted filter, honeycomb element, C housing, the body section, strainer wire mesh, helmet, O-ring housing to cover the fuel tank, drain plug, gasket filter, gasket, cap, gasket, specification fuel tank 3200 gallon, basic, modification 4,000, 3,600, 2,600, 16, 1,700. And that provides the SD45 locomotive service manual, section 1, fuel systems.